I'm now taking a walk along, not taking a walk in the opposite direction, or continuing the direction I took the other day. I started way up there at the end of Old Town, Barasico, after I'd hiked up the hill to the right there. Came back down, crossed probably that bridge there, and now I'm going to continue on down this side because there's some interesting modern architecture way down here a ways. Then I'll walk back, I think, part of the other side to pick up anything interesting. This pan I'll make may give us a little hint as to how some of these major streets in Sarajevo might have looked in the old days. Might have looked just exactly like this. Very elegant church-like building. We'll see when I can see what's on that steeple in a moment. What this building originally was. When I get closer, we'll find out what it now is. And this very modern, interesting bridge, more so as we get closer, and you'll see how they've designed that center portion. It's now the Academy of Fine Arts, but I'm pretty sure it was something else before that. Looks too much like a monastery or a church. A gentleman I spoke to thought this might have been an Evangelica Church at one time. And it is somewhat rivaled by this slightly tawdry old building. I'm not sure that it's tawdry as much as one might describe patina on new furniture, or I mean old furniture. And there's a Mac reseller inside here. And here you get a little idea of the simple yet elegant bridge design. A little bit more of a look at the detail on the construction of this bridge. A little pan up the muddy spring-laden waters of this river. And there again, looking back on the other side, some older, elegant. This is probably Austro-Hungarian architecture. There's no possible way anyone could think they're looking at a tourist. Certainly just an ordinary Bosnian going about his day. The gentleman I inquired of inside suggested this might have been an Evangelica church, well restored, maintained, but then it of course does house a Macline building, a Apple reseller. This building still rivals it across the river, slightly tawdry, although tawdry might not be the ideal word, more appropriately it might be patina-like on old furniture. Just nosily poking my camera's lens into this art facility to look at these spindly sculptures of ballet dancers. This building still rivals it across the river, slightly tawdry, although tawdry might not be the ideal word, more appropriately it might be patina-like on old furniture. Just nosily poking my camera's lens into this art facility to look at these spindly sculptures of ballet dancers. Almost on stilts. You can see how this could be an artist's, a non-ballet dancer's perception of a ballet dancer. There are a couple of modern buildings to add some nice modern delight, but with an old building down there, so perhaps that was another street that has some architecture to reflect the old Hungarian period. Here an older building with two side portions that look somewhat classical, crapped up by a redo or whatever of the center portion. Here a quite old building. I'd seen it from the other side on the tram, but almost missed it because of the wall and the tree. But it reflects that transience of civilization's architecture and other reflections. You can see how its surface of plaster and illustration is eroding down to its earlier original brick. Yet some pretty detail exists. Some more. I'm just guessing that this building may be one of the original Winter Olympic buildings of '84. Hunt may recognize it. Now entering a park. Kind of pretty at this moment without the rain and with these blossoms. Has a pretty stream, something that looks like it's for sitting, but it looks like it's a monument, and that probably is the monument. As with most modern sculptures, you have to wonder what it's symbolizing. And you wonder, in this case, whether these pockmarks we say are bullet marks. It's quite more than reasonably possible. And if I could read the language, we'd actually have a clue what this is and what the implication of this iconic bit of sculpture is, repeated several times. Perhaps it's even a fountain. Perhaps water would have come out of there. Now, like so much of the world, it's in disuse. This copse of large buildings I'm in the midst of has the look of administration, either government or it might be university. I can't tell, I don't see any students. But it's a pretty little park area that we're going to walk through. It says Canton Sarajevo, Ministerivo, so this is a government building. And maybe the buildings that surround this park-like area reflect that a little bit earlier Austro-Hungarian period. How do you say that? Austro-Hungarian period. Quiet little place for a lady to sit. Imagine when that tree was planted and what events it has seen amidst these government buildings. A little concession to beauty here. An early planning for the longevity of summer, hopefully. And these huge larches, I think they are, add some kind of grandeur. Must be good in the summer when it's so hot in this area. This apparently is a hangout for couples. Walking around looking for and shooting architecture is merely an application excuse, if you will, to go walking around. It's a worthy application. A little bit of a modern touch. A man walked out of the store to my right and he could not resist looking in the mirror of the window opposite in the store. I, of course, am not prey to that sort of thing. How Bosnian young people learn how to speak English so well. American movies, cartoons, songs. Here's a nice big park I'm inexorably drawn to, so we'll cross the street like how about right now. An interesting water feature. One of the most interesting things about it is it's got water in it and actually is being used. Less and less you see that. Notice in the background this Muslim cemetery. This must be a Muslim cemetery somehow, because you can see the tombstones sprinkled all about. Has some pretty effects as I walk around, and the light reflects through what look like layers of glass plate. You'd think this sub-level human would somehow gain lessons from the very monuments they construct after war to memorialize their own slaughters. Looking a little bit sparse right now in this weather, but and some trees yet to bud. What a pretty place. Any park is. It's designed to appeal to tranquility. This is a pretty house. This is a pretty house with that dark wood embellished in its carvings. And then the detail, the trim of pink on tan. Very pretty. It reminds me of movies I've seen of forests of Germany. Maybe somewhat the same idea, but simpler. Here are the backyard and porches of somewhat older homes. Up at the top of the park for a quick pan across it. I work my way back down, perhaps towards the river. This little plot of gravestones represents those who died in the war that will never appreciate this park again. To me it seems, other than the blocky design, which is necessitated by the nature of the building, I guess, it's a light, pretty. Arcing back towards the old part of town, on this street, a simple architecture, still probably Austro-Hungarian, a little bit more embellishment there. But I'm particularly intrigued by that building down there, which is just kind of nice. It obviously is a Y intersection, which is interesting, although only traffic goes one way of the Y. And then these buildings here of an older design. This in particular interesting. I just noticed as I turned around to look at it. What it was or is, I don't know. And a very impressive entryway for it. Very, looks almost, I would say, Germanic, whatever the heck I mean by that. And we'll go inside, so it looks like there's some more of the same. Almost some kind of Art Nouveau, it seems like here. Although something like that, I don't know what that is. I mean, with regard to Art Nouveau. Notice how this building is bifurcated in the sense that there's two very distinct parts to it. The major three-quarters on the right and what almost looks like a separate little building on the left. In this building, it seems that brown up there seems to allude to a shingled old buildings that used to have a sloping roof. That's not, but it's a way of making it look like it did. Makes for a pretty corner, and probably it was two streets before they made the street one way. Just wandered back here to see what was back here. Looks like not much. A shop, ironically. Pretty lady shop, and probably a bar called the Underground. A couple of examples of this nonsensical dancing. The guy uses his own radio. We can't hear the music, we just watch him. This building is another ministry of something, and it leads us down into an entire street of the old architecture, which is kind of neat. I guess that what I'm about to enter is the Old Town Road, the pedestrian road. This dog is interesting because he kind of reflects the mindset of dogs around here, and that is completely at home, unafraid, unconcerned. When he's sitting up, he just takes a mild, curious interest in the people that walk by him. This is what remains of my moussaka. It's a little bit thicker, I mean, literally in height. Its height is greater than what I had the first night I came at Nanina's. Its height is greater. And it's got a lot of potato and then a layer of beef, minced beef in between, and then sour cream on top, which does add a lot to it. Then I'm having a cabbage salad, which is literally just a chopped up cabbage with some greased out vinegar sauce on it, and some of their good bread. I'm on tram 3 right now, going down to the Tunnel Museum, but on the tram I'm standing right here. It's the dividing point between the two trams. So I hold on up here, which is on the front of the tram, and then the rear part of the tram is where my feet are. So when the tram turns, I rotate partially. Modern, interesting mosque with a double minaret. Building now used as an advertising. Yeah, I got off tram 3 in the upper left-hand corner of Liza, and I'm following my pencil line down to Butmir and to number 1 here, which is where the Tunnel Museum. And the Tunnel Museum was a device that was used to go underneath the airport from the other part of Sarajevo to get supplies back and forth without getting killed by the snipers. A couple more of those interesting haystacks in situ. First day since I've been in Eastern Europe, Bosnia, that there has been this much sun, and it could still rain quickly. It already did this morning, and then the sun came back out. But these tulips kind of give rise to spring and the hope for summer in this small neighborhood of Butmir. Pretty little complex of bird houses on this yard. And notice how they paint with something the trees to keep the bugs from getting at them. They're next door pretty. Okay, I'm about ready to enter into the Tunnel Museum. Maybe the flags of Bosnia and Herzegovina after about a 45-minute walk out here. Some pictures from the tunnel days. Compare the legitimacy of this with the falsity of that pyramid tunnel system, which was really, I think, just a mine of some sort. The usual regalia of slaughter. In this instance, defense. A man and a tool probably used to make the tunnel. Egg cartons. This is interesting. It portrays how they set the tunnel up with apparently a set of tracks and these little cars to carry things with. How clever. But it allowed, I'm sure, much greater speed and efficiency and volume of supplies to be brought in. Amazing to watch your city be destroyed, knowing that the people doing it are trying to kill you. Here we're in the tunnel. Not very high, but then you don't need it to be, particularly with this clever rail system. It does the job for you. That's what you want it to do. Now, how they pulled stuff forward, I wonder if they had a system for pulling the cars from one side to the other without having to have men go through doing it. Here we're to a simulated end of the tunnel, I'm sure. So there past the bus is where the tunnel began and would have run over to where you probably see trucks and things like that moving around, like right over there. But it would be underneath the airport where they could get the food, apparently, and bring it over this way. Small example of how to use color, some architectural elements to create a little bit of a design difference and distinction. And a beautiful view of Twist Tower in the sun. Just a mosque I saw down a side street on one of the back streets I was walking. Here it has a new porch, if you will. It's two-story, which is interesting. Some interesting buildings back there. I don't know if I can get to them from here. We'll see. Notice these old timbers. This dates from 1766. When it was rebuilt from one that was built in the 14th century but burned with fire. Here in this little park, which behind me is a skate park, there's some interesting, I call it park art. I don't know what it is. Those look like megaphones, and maybe this is some illustration of a musical instrument, fanciful as it is. I remember seeing it from the tram this morning. So I must be on the main drag, even though I've been trying to stay away from it. No idea what this illustrates. Here it then ascends, 3 more flute pipes, and what looks to me reminds me of a representation of a bellows, but I don't know if that's what it is. Now I'll get off this main drag by crossing through the skate park and get back up on that side road there. And a split tower a little bit farther up. I thought I'd walk up this street just because it looked dark and old and decrepit, and it gets me away from the main drag. And it is all of those things. The thin veneer of architectural detail is slowly sloughing off. I'm always intrigued when I look at the remaining chunks of detail and try to imagine what it was like when the street was new and fresh and brilliant, and who the people were and what kind of lives they lived, and how would those lives compare with the lives of the people living in them now? What lies behind that window? And further down the street we see the remains of old buildings, and maybe this building right in front of us was redone somehow some years ago. Here an old one, but the sweeping stairway, wide stairway, probably was installed at a time when things were quite pretty. I don't know. I said hello to a couple of old ladies. One in particular was old, and I said "Zdravo," which means hello, and she gave this little kind of chuckle, as in it speaks, and further as in it tries to speak Bosnian. But if I find this area interesting, imagine if she's lived in it all of her life, what changes she's seen. The war, other events, the degradation of the properties, the death of all of her friends and neighbors over time, the raising of her children, and the neighborhood's kids. Found one, so I'm going back down on an angular street, but Here is a side street, so I'll pursue that just for fun. Everywhere is evidence of bullet holes, but evidence also of some patching, but not enough money to complete the job and repaint. All throughout there are not only the old decrepit buildings, those restored, stately old buildings, but also completely new modern buildings, houses, and as with most places, it's in a state of transition. Or do some of these buildings get to retain most of their surface? But not all. You can see it pretty heavily weathered, but still some pretty fascinating detail up there. Let's go up and take a look. Imagine the man who built this building, who owned it when it was built, and what his concept was in this graffiti, or this Now I'm back where I was last night, in this park with the glass monument to children who were killed during the war. I want to take a look at that monument in the sun. What's interesting is why all the parks that I'm seeing have Muslim gravestones and presumably graves in them. I wonder what the reason for that is. A monument looking somewhat phallic to a perverted mind like mine. We just have to look at the other tape to see if the sun is making a significant impact on the sculpture. I think it is. This little market that continues down here further, I'll walk through it. But this was the site of the double bombing, if you will, by the Serbs during the Bosnian War, in which the second time when 38 people were slaughtered, and there are gruesome pictures of the maimed bodies that you can find on the internet. It's on grotesque sites that enjoy that kind of stuff. But it was that second act that precipitated the NATO to bomb the Serbians and shut down their atrocity. This was that site.
That's why most of them decide to run up to north. Bio takav neotežen da sam nisam moja vremena da se oprostim, nisam se sjetila toga, dok sam mi udaljila oko nego 10 minuta. Onda sam ga pozvala, Sajre, okrenuo sam, na njegov profil sam vidjela. Ko sve poslije, odmahnuo mi toga se i sjeća. Tako sam ga malo sjetila.
je kad ideš mogu kada nije vodići. Evo mi kaže, ja u tom trenutku ništa nisam više znala za sebe i ja sam došla sam gustoću kazanja u misiji i tako kazanja što mi pobilo. Tu sam se rastala sa svojim sinom Nerminom. Meni smo pozdravili smo se. Što je razumno? Požela sam jednom drugom da se sretnimo, ali nikad se nisam srela.
I napokon došao je trenutak da se posle bude protiv Davija doći posjetiti na obnovu.
Tebe možda od 10 metara. I ti ne znaš šta se dešava. Znate, negdje se život gasi, negdje počinje. Ne znam da vam kažem, ne znam. 12 godina, pa do 70.
Ostao mi je lik moga sina.
Bio je sad jedan punkt, na tome punktu su stajali četnici naoružani i kaže, sad kako mi idemo dobro, kaže jedan, ti prođe ovamo, da moj muž prođe ovamo, a ti produži dalje. Da ja prođem dalje.
Sin je imao maslinasto tram, boja maslina. Jako je prošlo, strašno je prošlo. Ništa nije govorio, samo je onako tresao se i ja sam ga uvijek otimala četnika, privijala ga sebe, oni su njega otimali od mene i kad je vidio da ga ja ne mogu spasti, tada je počeo plakati.
Ste mnogo posjetili? Kako se nešto posjetiti? Ajde, sam ne skorišću. Ajde.
next to this mosque that I videoed the very first day I got here in the rain. So now we can see what it looks like to be in Sarajevo, old section if you will, when the sun is out and the cafes are full. So much more interesting it is when all is sunny and the walkways are filled with people. Just have to shoot the mosque again when it's sunny so you can appreciate it. I don't know if this view with sunlight and blue skies outside will be enhanced from what it was in the rain, but these pretty carpets. I think these are handmade. We'll take a little closer look at this 3D relief, if you will. It's so typical. It has a name. So they're niches that are stacked, if you will, as I've described it, one on top of the other, and they project forward until we meet for this final canopy here. Now I'm shooting up to the dome that's to the left of the main dome so we can get a closer look. What beautiful intricacy. There are two turbes here, or tombs. This first one, the largest one, I think is the bays. And this is, the smaller one, is his freed slave, Murat-beg Murat-beg Tardik. I'm probably replicating those words when it's only two of them. But a fascinating story and quite a legacy. This old town and all of its attributes that he set up as a trust, a living trust, his mosque, his madrasa, a library, and you may be able to get a little bit of a glimpse if I cover where he lies. A fine man and a great legacy. And how fitting is it that the man he trusted throughout his life, who was a slave and then freed by him, should lie for whatever this eternity is beside him. We look inside a little bit, and not much of interest to see. I'm actually looking for Cafe Giovan, which used to be the Caravanserai, but I saw this Romanesque church and tower. And I think this is called an iconostasis, found in most Christian churches. The old cathedrals, it's incredibly elaborate, as is this one. These panels, of course, if we look closely at them and we're scholars, could identify individuals or events that were important to the church, this church. One wonders, standing inside here, how this arrangement was used. There, a small pulpit, but the chairs that are to the left of it, and all along this wall to my right, who are they for? The usual bigwigs of the church or ordinary people? And how did they conduct services here? Perhaps another pulpit? Did the main liturgy take place behind that archway, that iconostasis? What is the significance of this discreet little piece of furniture, if you will? Pleasant surroundings of these adjoining buildings that are probably relatively new, although it's possible the one in the back there might have been an earlier structure related to the church. I don't know. Recognize this because I have been here before. Just didn't know I was. Looking for Marika Han. Where we are now is in the lower part. These beams, quite old, as you can well imagine. Upstairs would have been the rooms for the traders. And out here, where all of the people are, would have been the center courtyard. The stables, he tells me, were off to the left here. Again, some of the old structures, what that functioned as, and whether it's new or old, no one knows. Somewhere in here, if this is authentic, would have been a fountain in the middle, for water, of course. And again, traders up above. I'll go upstairs until I get thrown out. Although they graciously let me into the lower part. So here we are. You can see how expansive this was. Imagine the stories that can be told from here if these walls could speak. The men who traveled here, consider where they traveled, what their journeys were like, the adventures of those trading journeys. The sounds, the noise, the smells of the products they brought. And upstairs in these rooms, or one similar to it, the traders lived, like a working man's hotel, frankly. But these were exclusive working men who probably had considerable credibility. How many men have stood like I am and looked down into this courtyard? Considered the deals they were going to make, the profits they hoped to make, what they would do with the money, what the trip back home would be like. In this corner, as I sweep 90 degrees, you get an idea of how big this was. Imagine the noise, the animals downstairs with their bellowing. And the building appears to be filled with attorneys
Imagine if devices like this were or are original. I don't know. Doesn't look it. Are there really vessels like this big? And what did they make or do? We're walking through history now, but all we can do is reflect on the charisma of place, the feelings I get, wondering what all this was about. Wishing somehow that Steven Spielberg would turn this into a reality. Might this have been one of the early fountains? I wonder if these people that I'll pan as I make my turn know where they are. On the wall inside the restaurant that I was in are inscriptions of Omar Khayyam's poetry, but probably not the original inscriptions. Where those were located, I don't know. Although these do seem to be in a position where, if you look at those little icons, they may reflect where they actually were, but I don't know. The waiter I talked to said he didn't think they were. Why I like Omar Khayyam, because Clarence Darrow, the great attorney from the 20s and 30s, attorney for the damned, quoted a famous Omar Khayyam poem in the Logan Leopold case in the defense of them against the charge of their horrific kidnapping, premeditated murder.
Pretty building with some interesting features. I wonder in retrospect if they aren't two separate buildings. They look as though they might be two curious dormers, and it looks, from what I can see, as though there might be the corner of two more up above. So on the side of the museum is this plaque that says, from this place on 28 June 1914, Rio Principe assassinated the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand, and his wife Sophia, and it does not add, but it should, the baby she was carrying. It's not often you can look at one man and one single event and recognize it as a spark for a major colossal war. This is Franz and his wife returning from the City Hall visit moments before they were assassinated. Eerily similar to the video clip of Kennedy and his wife before he was assassinated, and the actual site of the assassination. Apparently, while one man did the killing, many were involved, very much like Lincoln. This is my salad. This is cabbage and tomato, or water and bread. I like sitting in a place like this where the tourists go by so you can see different people. Having got myself lost, I'm wondering if I'm taking a route that gets me back down below. And that idea did not work. Building found in my wanderings. Now I think I've got the correct way to get down and out. It's always fun getting lost. Majestic old hotel, at least it looks, majestic looking old church, at least it seems old. Not too far away from my hostel before I retire from Sarajevo. This is my 6-bed dorm room. I've had it for 4 days and nobody in it. It's brand new, like a year. Beautiful bathroom. Nice big shower tub.
And I think all four, I'm thinking about $16 a night or something. A little more expensive than some of the others.